This lesson will discuss the reasons why the Soviet Union collapsed during the 1980s. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev took power in the Soviet Union. At 54 years old, he was the youngest Soviet ruler since Stalin, and significantly younger than his immediate predecessors. He was only a child during Stalin's purges and had no memory of them. After taking power, Gorbachev initiated 3 reform programs within the state. The first was glasnost, or openness. This policy was at odds with the totalitarian policy of silence about official policy that discouraged the dissemination of any knowledge about the inner workings of the state. To Gorbachev, any reforms to save the communist system needed to allow the free flow of ideas and information. In addition, Gorbachev reopened the churches, released imprisoned political prisoners, allowed previously censored books to be published, and also allowed investigative journalists to report on and criticize state officials. Gorbachev began perestroika, or economic restructuring, in 1986. He recognized that the previous policy of planning most economic initiatives from the inefficient central offices led to poor outcomes. Instead of having party officials determine what to produce and set wages and prices, perestroika allowed local managers control over farm and factory policies. Small private businesses were even approved. This was not intended to eliminate communism, but to make it more efficient and productive. His third policy, democratization, was announced the following year. This was a gradually opening up of politics to more participants. A new legislative body would be elected. The previous process allowed voters to approve candidates who had already been selected by the Communist Party. Now, several candidates were presented as options for a post. As a result, several powerful party bosses were defeated by previously lesser-known reformers. Gorbachev also changed direction in foreign policy. He quickly realized that he could not compete with the $2 trillion U.S. military buildup that was part of Reagan's rollback policy. Instead, Gorbachev sought to sign an arms control deal. In December of 1987, Gorbachev and Reagan signed the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, or INF. This banned nuclear missiles with ranges of between 300 and 3,400 miles, leaving only short-range missiles, or ICBMs. Unfortunately for Gorbachev, some of these policies would lead to turmoil for the USSR. One of the major issues he faced had to do with the nationalities problem. Russians dominated most of the high positions within the USSR, but ethnic Russians were only the majority population within Russia itself. In fact, there were over 100 different nationalities within the USSR. Also, non-Russians were the majority of the population in 14 of the 15 Soviet Socialist republics. The first hint of problems developed when Georgia, Ukraine, and Moldavia all called for self-rule as a follow-up to Gorbachev's democratization policies. Then, the Central Asian republics called for the free exercise of Islam. The first major conflict, though, broke out in March of 1990, when the Baltic Republic of Lithuania declared independence from the Soviet Union, 50 years after it had been absorbed. Gorbachev had no intention of breaking up the USSR and ordered an economic blockade. Still, he was reluctant to act more forcibly and preferred to pursue a less aggressive stance. In January 1991, though, a riot led some Soviet soldiers to open fire on a crowd of unarmed demonstrators, killing 14 and wounding hundreds. In the midst of this developing crisis stepped Boris Yeltsin. He had previously been the mayor of Moscow and had just been elected to the Russian parliament under the new rules outlined earlier. He openly criticized Gorbachev's handling of the Lithuanian crackdown and complained that Gorbachev was moving too slowly. In June of 1991, Yeltsin became the Russian Federation's first directly elected president. Although he had criticized Gorbachev, both Yeltsin and Gorbachev opposed the old guard communists who were becoming increasingly concerned at the loss of Soviet power. Events rapidly escalated in August. On the 18th, when Gorbachev was vacationing at the Black Sea, hardline communists detained him and demanded his resignation. At the same time, hundreds of tanks occupied Moscow. Thousands of protesters opposed this attempted coup and gathered at the Russian parliament building. Boris Yeltsin, who was in Moscow at the time, also defied the soldiers and brazenly climbed onto some of those tanks in opposition. On August the 20th, the hardliners who detained Gorbachev and sent in the soldiers ordered them to open fire on Yeltsin and the protesters. The military refused to carry out such a massacre, however, and the next day, the military pulled out of Moscow and released Gorbachev. The attempted coup had failed. This proved to be the beginning of the end of the USSR. Gorbachev resigned his position as General Secretary of the Communist Party, but he held on to the presidency of the USSR. The vacancy and the failed coup of the military leaders led to the collapse of the Communist Party, and it ceased to operate from this point forward. Sensing an opportunity, Estonia and Latvia, the other two Baltic states, also declared their independence. Gorbachev opposed the breakup, but he had too little support to prevent it. As a result, all 15 of the Soviet Socialist republics separated into 15 separate states. Seeing his demise, on Christmas, Gorbachev also resigned as president of the USSR. As the president of Russia, Yeltsin quickly oversaw the creation of a new organization, the Commonwealth of Independent States, or CIS. This was a cooperative union of 11 of the 15 former Soviet states. The 3 Baltic states and Georgia did not join. Boris Yeltsin was now the most powerful man in Russia, but he faced some immediate problems. The Russian economy, used to 80 years of central control, was in complete disarray. Yeltsin hoped to jumpstart the economy by transitioning immediately into a free market economy with no transition period. This is called shock therapy, and saw the removal of trade barriers, price controls, and subsidies. Such an immediate, abrupt shift sent the economy into a tailspin. Between 1992 and 1994, the price of goods increased 8 times, an inflation rate of 800%. Factories had to cut production or shut down, with no one being able to afford their goods. But these cuts led to unemployment, and even more people who couldn't afford to purchase goods. In 1993, the Russian economy was in terrible shape. Many Russian legislators blamed Yeltsin, and in October of 1993 came out in opposition to him. Hypocritically, Yeltsin ordered the army to open fire on the Russian parliament building. This forced the parliament to back down, but demonstrated Yeltsin's increasing dictatorial streak. Another problem was developing for Yeltsin in Chechnya. This was a Muslim-popular region in southwest Russia that was not an autonomous region and therefore did not gain independence with the other states. The Chechens, however, wanted independence and declared it in late 1991. Yeltsin opposed this and sent 40,000 troops to restore order. By 1994, Chechnya's capital of Grozny had been reduced to rubble. In August of 1996, a ceasefire was proclaimed during the Russian elections, but war promptly resumed afterwards. Boris Yeltsin resigned in December of 1999, and the Chechen conflict was left unresolved. Yeltsin was succeeded by Vladimir Putin. His first order of business was to escalate the Chechen War. This proved popular, and he easily won the 2000 presidential election. In 2002, Putin, believing he had won the war, ordered a troop reduction. By this point, the number of Russian troops had doubled to 80,000. In October of 2002, however, Chechen rebels seized a Moscow theater. Putin ordered the police to storm the theater in a rescue effort, but the botched attempt led to the death of over 150 hostages. By 2009, despite continued terrorist incidents, the revolt had been ended, although a low-level insurgency continued until 2017. Putin has proven unable to restore Russia's economy or society. In 2002, there were approximately 50,000 homeless children living on the streets of Moscow. Half of those were under 13 years of age. Domestic violence rates and unemployment rates are high. Since the collapse of the USSR, Russia's population, standard of living, and life expectancy have all fallen.